Welcome to today's edition of Devotionables, brief devotions for busy people. And I've got a question for you. What is the most embarrassing moment of your life? Now, I'm going to guess that your mind has probably gone to really silly stories, humorous things that you've done, dumb things that you've done. But I think if we gave this question more thought, it might drive us to moments in our lives that were not just embarrassing, but also we might say shameful. You know, we've all got skeletons in our closet, stories we wouldn't want anybody to know. I'm going to share you just a brief one real quick. When I was in college, I was on a track team. And one day after a track meet, we'd had a great day. Our team decided to go out and celebrate. And we went to this party. And it was your typical college party. There was alcohol involved. And I did something really dumb, something really stupid. I don't know if I was trying to show off, but I actually stole a bottle of alcohol. And I didn't get 10 seconds from that event before I got busted. I'm not a very good thief. And the guy got in my face. He started yelling at me, accusing me of stealing this alcohol from him. And I had a teammate that stepped in between us and defended me. And this is what he said. He said, "Blake didn't steal any alcohol. This guy's a serious Christian." Well, as you can imagine, that was one of the most shameful moments that I can ever remember. Not only did I steal, but I also was being defended by this guy for being a Christian when I wasn't acting Christian at all. And not only was I damaging my reputation, more importantly, I was damaging the reputation of Christ. So, you know, we all have shameful stories like this, stories we wouldn't want anybody to know. But the Bible has something to say about shame. And specifically speaking, it tells us some things about how God wants us to view shame and how he deals with shame. We don't have to get very far into the Bible, Genesis chapter 3, that we see the first act of shame. As you know, Adam and Eve, they sin in the garden. And starting in verse 8, we read that Adam and Eve, what they did after they sinned is they hid because they were afraid. And you know, when we encounter shame, that's oftentimes what we do. We want to hide. We're afraid. We don't want to deal with the consequences of our sin. But you know, God's ways are higher. Let me give you 3 quick ways that we see God dealing with shame in a good way. First of all, God in this passage, what he does is he doesn't ignore sin, but he brings it into the light. You know, sin quickly leads to chaos with Adam and Eve. You have Adam blaming Eve. You got Eve blaming the serpent. There's a blaming game, but God says, stop it. Stop blaming, confess your sin, admit what you've done, and that's when healing can begin. So that's what the first thing God says about shame. He says, don't hide it, bring it into the light. The second thing is he points us to hope. You know, God doesn't give us over to shame's lie that says that our sin makes us a hopeless cause. Because even as he is dealing out the punishment to Adam and Eve, we also see that he is already working on a solution. In verse 15, we read that Satan will be crushed by Jesus. He says, "I will put enmity between you, Satan, and the woman, between your offspring and her offspring. And he, being Jesus, shall bruise your head." So Jesus is going to crush Satan. Although sin had entered into the world right then and there, God was already speaking towards a plan of restoration. And here's the deal. If Adam and Eve can be restored for bringing sin into the world, ushering in sin, we can all be forgiven for what we have done. And the third thing is God covers us and he makes us whole. You know, in their shame, what does Adam and Eve do? They begin sewing together leaves to cover up their nakedness. But God does one thing better. He gives them a greater covering. And he gives them coverings of skin. So God doesn't rip away their leaves. He doesn't mock them. He doesn't rub their sin in their face. Instead, he provides for them and he covers for them. I don't know about you, but I can't read this text and not think about what Jesus has done for us and his atoning work for us, and that he imputes his righteousness to us. 2 Corinthians 5:21 says this, "God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God." So friends, next time you're asked that question, what was the most embarrassing moment in your life? Instead of sharing a story of shame, because we remember God wipes away those stories, he cleanses us from those things. Instead, tell a silly story. And let's just be honest, we've all passed gas at the least opportune time.